My 7-year-old came home and saw a huge sold sign at the house. My mother told her that she is now homeless and should wait at the gate. She waited for 4 hours in the snow. When I found out, I just said, "Okay." 16 hours later, my parents received a call and started screaming. I didn't know any of that when I turned onto our street. All I knew was that my flight had landed late, my phone was on 2%, and I wanted nothing more than to get home, shower, and crawl into my own bed before my body realized how tired it actually was. I'd been gone for 5 days. Long meetings, polite dinners, the kind of travel where everyone keeps saying great conversation while checking their watch. I slowed as I approached the house, more out of habit than anything else. That's when I saw Ella. She was standing by the gate, not playing, not pacing, standing, still, like she'd been placed there and forgotten. For half a second, my brain tried to make it normal. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she'd just stepped outside. Maybe... Then I saw the way her shoulders were hunched, how her arms were locked tight against her sides. I saw the way she didn't move when my car stopped, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. I got out of the car. "Ella." She turned her head slowly, like it took effort. Her face was pale. Her lips tinged blue in a way that made my stomach drop. Snow clung to the knees of her pants. Her eyelashes were wet, either from melting flakes or crying. It was hard to tell. "Mom?" she said. It wasn't relief. It was a question. I crossed the distance in 3 steps and crouched in front of her, hands already on her arms, checking without thinking. Cold. Too cold. Not just winter cold. Outside too long cold. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice even because she needed even. "Hey, I'm here." She nodded once, like she was confirming data. Then she leaned into me, stiff at first, then all at once. Her body shook, not sobbing, shivering. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. She shrugged. "A while." That answer told me everything. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders, pulled her closer. My eyes flicked past her, to the front yard. That's when I saw it. The sign. Huge. White post. Red letters. Impossible to miss. Sold. It looked festive. Like a celebration. I stared at it for a second too long. My brain didn't want to accept it. It kept trying to reframe it. Maybe it was for the neighbor's house. Maybe someone put it there by mistake. It was very clearly in our yard. "Ella," I said, "can you tell me what happened?" She swallowed. "Dad brought me." That made sense. Brendan had Ella this week. We'd planned it that way because of my trip. He always dropped her off here when his time ended. He never stayed long. Conflict made him itch. "He dropped me off like normal," she said. "He waved and drove away." I nodded, like I was taking notes. "And then?" "I knocked," she said. "I knocked a lot." My jaw tightened. Grandma opened the door a little. Not all the way. "What did she say?" Ella looked down at her boots. "She said the house was sold." I waited. "She said I'm homeless," Ella said quietly, "and that I should wait at the gate." Something hot and sharp went through my chest, then settled into a very calm, very dangerous place. "Did she let you inside at all?" Ella shook her head. "She said I don't live here anymore." "And you waited?" She nodded again. "She said it would be better if I waited." I stood up slowly and took Ella's hand, turning us toward the house. The front door wasn't locked. That detail mattered. I didn't know why yet, but it did. I walked inside. The house smelled wrong. Cardboard, tape, cleaning spray, that strange hollow smell rooms get when they're being emptied. Boxes lined the hallway, some sealed, some half-packed. My name was written on one in thick black marker. Ella's on another. I felt something go very still inside me. Mom came out of the kitchen first. She looked composed, annoyed even, like I'd come home early and thrown off her schedule. Dad hovered behind her, holding a roll of packing tape. My sister Samantha sat at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, legs crossed, humming under her breath like this was a minor inconvenience. "You're back," Mom said. "Yes," I said. "I live here." Her eyes flicked to Ella. "She's inside now." "That's good." "You left her outside," I said. She had a coat. I looked at the boxes, the stripped walls, the empty space where Ella's drawings usually hung. "What is going on?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. "We sold the house." The words didn't land right away. They hovered, waiting for permission. "You did what?" "We sold it," Mom said, slower, patient, like she was explaining something obvious. "You refused to listen. You wouldn't help. So we handled it." Samantha finally looked up. "It's for the family." I let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You sold my house," I said. "You are not on the deed." Dad straightened. "We had a power of attorney." I stared at him. "For emergencies. For Ella. Not for selling my property." Mom waved a hand. "Details. You didn't need a house this big anyway. You travel. You're divorced. Samantha needs help." Samantha smiled, thin and satisfied. "You could always rent." I looked down at Ella. Her face was buried against my shoulder, fingers twisted into my sweater like she was afraid I might disappear. "You told my child she was homeless," I said. Mom shrugged. "It's not untrue. You made her stand outside in the snow. She needed to understand the situation." Something in me finally snapped into place. I had been shocked, confused. For a moment, even tempted to argue, but this wasn't an argument. It was a declaration, and declarations only go one way. "Okay," I said. Mom blinked. "Excuse me?" "Okay," I repeated. I didn't explain. I didn't ask questions. I didn't tell them what I was about to do. I turned and walked out. Behind me, Mom's voice rose. "Sarah, you can't just—" I closed the door. Outside, the cold hit my face like a slap. I kept a firm hand on Ella's shoulder and walked her to the car, buckling her in with hands that were steady now. Steady in the way you get when the decision has already been made. She looked at me, eyes wide. "Are we really homeless?" "No," I said. "We're not." I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Mom standing in the doorway, arms crossed, absolutely certain she'd won. 16 hours later, my parents received a call and started screaming. I used to think betrayal announced itself. A raised voice, a slammed door, something cinematic. Turns out, it mostly sounds like normal conversation, just repeated long enough that you stop hearing the warning underneath. After we left the house that night, after Ella finally fell asleep somewhere warm with her coat still on because she didn't trust the heat yet, I kept replaying the same question in my head. How did it get this far? The answer was uncomfortable, which is usually how you know it's the right one. It didn't start with a sold sign. It didn't start with snow. It didn't even start with money. It started with me being reasonable. I'm divorced. That's not a dramatic sentence. It's just a fact. Brendan and I figured out a schedule that mostly works. Ella spends time with him, I travel for work sometimes, and on paper everything looks stable. People love saying things like, "At least you're civil," as if that's a prize you win instead of the bare minimum. My job pays well. Not private jet well, but I don't panic at the grocery store well. It also means I travel. Conferences, meetings, the kind of trips where you pretend hotel coffee is fine because complaining won't fix it. About a year ago, my parents called with that tone. You know the one. Not quite desperate, not quite casual. Carefully balanced guilt. They were having a rough patch. Just for a bit. Just needed a place to land. Just one bed. Just until things stabilized. I said yes. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I could handle it. I told myself that family helped family, and that saying no would make me the villain in a story I didn't want to star in. At first it was fine. Awkward, but fine. They stayed in the guest room. They thanked me. They talked about their plans to move out like they were real plans and not bedtime stories. Then weeks turned into months, and the word temporary quietly packed its bags and left. They started rearranging things. Small stuff at first. Moving dishes. Commenting on my grocery choices. Asking why I did things the hard way. Dad started fixing things I hadn't asked him to touch. Mom started saying, "our house," without catching herself. I noticed. I just didn't do anything about it. Ella noticed too, though she didn't have words for it. She lived in the same house, but not quite with them. They weren't cruel. That would have been easier. Cruelty leaves marks you can point to. This was colder. Polite smiles, short patience, help offered like a favor that would be remembered later. They'd watch her if I asked. They'd pick her up from school if there was an emergency, but it always came with a sigh, a reminder of how busy they were, how much they were doing for me. Ella stopped asking them for things on her own. She stopped running to the door when they came home. She learned at 7 that love sometimes has conditions you don't get to negotiate. At the same time, my sister Samantha became the main event. Samantha getting married was treated like a national holiday. Every conversation circled back to it. The venue, the dress, the house she and her fiancé deserved, the life she was finally starting, and the grandchildren, not the one already sitting at the table quietly coloring, the future ones, the hypothetical ones, the ones that counted. Ella would be there, crayons spread out, while Mom talked about how excited she was to finally be a grandmother. I noticed. I still didn't say anything. Then the money talk started. It always began softly, suggestions dressed as concern. You don't really need a house that big, Sarah. You're gone so much. You could always rent. Your sister is just starting out. Eventually, it got less subtle. Refinance. Take out a loan. Sell and downsize. Help your sister. Help the family. I said no. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just no. I said I wasn't selling my house. I said I wasn't taking on debt so someone else could play homeowner. I said Samantha was an adult and would figure it out like the rest of us had. That was the moment things shifted. The house didn't feel the same after that. Conversations stopped when I walked into the room. Doors closed more often. Samantha stopped pretending to like me. Mom started using words like selfish. Dad talked about sacrifice. They both talked like my stability was a resource they were entitled to redistribute. And still, I stayed calm. Still, I told myself it would pass. Part of that calm came from trust, or what I thought was trust. Because yes, there was paperwork. When you're a single parent who travels, you make contingency plans. I had given my parents limited power of attorney. Narrow, specific. The kind meant for emergencies, school forms, medical decisions if I was unreachable. Things like that. Not money, not property, not my house. I knew that. I was very clear about that. I didn't imagine they would see it differently. Now, looking back, I can see the arrogance building. The way they talked about handling things. The way they spoke as if authority came from age, not ink on paper. What I can't see yet, what I couldn't see then, was the exact moment they decided the rules didn't apply to them. All I knew, sitting in a hotel room later that night with Ella asleep and my phone buzzing uselessly in my pocket, was that they had done something they believed they were allowed to do. And they had believed it strongly enough to leave a child outside in the snow. That's the part that keeps replaying. Not the sold sign, not the boxes, not even the word homeless. The certainty, the way Mom said it like a fact, not a cruelty, like gravity, like weather, like something Ella should have accepted quietly. That certainty is what scared me, because certainty doesn't apologize. Certainty doesn't back down. Certainty doesn't stop until it hits something harder. I didn't know yet what they had signed. I didn't know what they had shown anyone. I didn't know how far they'd gone or how sloppy they'd been. I just knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever they thought they'd done, they thought it was final. And people who think they've already won tend to be very loud right before they realize they haven't. We were already at the hotel when my nervous system stopped pretending this was survivable on vibes alone. It was one of those places that tries to look cozy by putting a lamp in the corner and calling it a personality. Beige walls, beige carpet, a framed picture of something that might have been a flower if you squint hard enough. The kind of room where your thoughts echo because there's nothing else to do. Ella was asleep in the bed by the window. She'd kicked one sock off in the night, like her body still believed it was at home and safe enough to be messy. Her coat was folded at the foot of the bed, too neat, not laundry neat, emergency neat. I sat in the other bed with my shoes still on because I couldn't shake the feeling that if I took them off, I'd lose momentum. And right now, momentum was the only thing holding me upright. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. Not because I'm mature, because I'm strategic. If I saw my mother's name on the screen, I would do something that would require a lawyer for a completely different reason. I stared at Ella for a minute. Her eyelashes, the faint pink line across her cheek from the pillow, the way she held her hands curled close to her chest like she was keeping warmth in. Then the question I'd been skirting around all evening finally caught me by the collar. How long was she outside? I knew a while. I knew too long. I didn't know the number, and the number mattered. I slipped into the bathroom and closed the door softly. The mirror showed a woman who looked surprisingly normal for someone who had just learned her parents were capable of telling a 7-year-old she was homeless. I called Brendan. He answered fast, like he'd been waiting for it. "Hey," he said. His voice was cautious, but not defensive. That was new. "Hi," I said. "What time did you drop Ella off today?" A beat. I could hear him thinking, not stalling. "About 2, he said. 2-ish. Why?" I did the math in my head. I got there a little after 6. My throat tightened, but my voice didn't change. "Okay," I said. "So she was outside for 4 hours. What?" His voice jumped. "No, your mom opened the door." "I'm not asking what you saw," I said. "I'm asking what time you dropped her off." He exhaled sharply. "Around 2. I swear." "Okay," I repeated. Silence stretched. Then quieter. "Sarah, I didn't leave her with a stranger. I left her with your mom. She was at the door." "I know," I said. And I did. I wasn't calling to make Brendan the villain. He's a lot of things, avoidant, allergic to conflict, the human version of I don't want to get involved, but he's not psychic. He didn't know my mother would turn a normal handoff into a survival experiment. "I'm not blaming you," I said, because he needed to hear it and because it was true. "I just needed the time." Another exhale. "Okay. You saw Mom open the door," I said. "Did Ella look okay when she got out of your car?" "Yeah," he said immediately. "She was fine, bundled up. She waved at me." I swallowed hard. "Did Mom say anything?" "No," he said. She barely looked at me, which honestly felt like a win. I almost laughed. It came out like air. Same, I said. He hesitated. Is she okay now? She's asleep, I said. She ate. She's warm. Thank God, he said, and for once it didn't sound like a phrase. It sounded like a feeling. Brendan, I said, and I kept it calm. If anyone contacts you about this, my parents, Samantha, do not engage. Just tell me. I won't talk to them, he said. I'm not stepping in that. Smartest thing he's ever said. Okay, I said. Thanks. We hung up. I stood in that bathroom for a moment, palms flat on the sink, letting the number sit heavy in my chest. 4 hours. Then I went back into the room, checked Ella again, and finally took my shoes off like a person trying to pass for human. In the morning, Ella woke up hungry. That mattered. When kids stop being hungry, something's wrong. I want waffles, she announced, like she was making an executive decision on behalf of the whole family. Of course you do, I said. This place charges $8 for bottled water. They can afford waffles. She smiled, small but real. We ate in the hotel breakfast area, surrounded by other people pretending they weren't also in temporary lives. I let her drown her waffles in syrup because I wasn't interested in being the health police today. Today, I was the stability police. Back upstairs, I put cartoons on for her and handed her the remote like it was a sacred object. Stay here, I said. I'm making a couple calls. Are you calling Grandma? She asked. No, I said. I'm calling adults who don't think a gate is childcare. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded like she liked the sound. I stepped into the hallway for the first call. I called the non-emergency line and reported what happened, cleanly, factually, without dramatics. My daughter is 7. She was denied entry to her home. She was told she was homeless. She was left outside in snow for approximately 4 hours. The woman on the phone went quiet, then asked for details in a careful voice. Address, names, times. I gave her Brendan's drop-off time and my arrival time. The number landed with more weight when I said it out loud. She gave me a case number and told me an officer might follow up. Thank you, I said. When I hung up, my hands were still steady. It wasn't catharsis. It was documentation. I went back inside. Ella was on the bed, watching cartoons like her brain had decided it would rather live in an animated universe where problems get solved in 11 minutes. Did you do the call? She asked. Yep, I said. Grown-up paperwork call. She thought about that. Are we still homeless? No, I said. We're just temporarily paying for a room with a flower painting. She looked at the wall. That's not a flower. That's what makes it art, I said. She giggled once, and I held on to that sound like it was a receipt proving we still existed. Then I made the next call. A colleague had sent me a lawyer's name with the kind of message that tells you it's serious. Call him. He moves fast. We did a Zoom consult because speed mattered more than ambiance. He looked like someone who owned multiple suits and had never once smiled by accident. Sarah, he said. Tell me what happened. Short version. I gave him the short version. He didn't gasp, didn't do sympathy face, didn't say, I'm so sorry. He just started sorting facts like they were files. Do you own the house? He asked. Yes, I said. Sole owner. Did you sign anything authorizing a sale? He asked. No. Are your parents on the deed? He asked. No. He nodded once. Then the sale is either not real, not finished, or not lawful. Possibly all three. I told him about the limited power of attorney. He asked, Does it include real estate transactions? No, I said. It was for emergencies and Ella-related stuff, not property. Good, he said. Then we treat anything involving a sale as suspect until proven otherwise. I watched Ella in the background, legs swinging as she ate cereal from a cup like a tiny raccoon. What happens now? I asked. I'm going to identify the transaction, he said. If a sold sign is up, there's a realtor and an escrow or title file. I'll contact them and put them on notice that the owner disputes authorization. That typically triggers an immediate hold. Typically, I repeated. He gave the smallest possible shrug. People get very cautious when the word fraud gets anywhere near their paperwork. Paper has a way of ruining confidence, I said. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement that I was at least functional. Do not contact your parents about this, he said. Do not threaten. Do not warn. Let them be surprised. Finally, I said. A plan that matches my personality. He told me what he needed from me. Basic proof of identity, ownership info he could pull from public records, and said he'd start immediately. When the call ended, nothing had changed in the room, but something had changed in the air, because now the situation had left the family ecosystem and entered the adult world, where people don't care who your mother is. They care what you can prove. I put my phone down and tried to breathe. I didn't have to wait long. Mid-afternoon, my phone started vibrating. Dad called. Mom called. Samantha called. Over and over. I didn't answer. A voicemail came in from Dad first. His voice sounded strained, too high. Sarah, we just got a call. They said the file is frozen. They're asking questions. This is ridiculous. Frozen. A second voicemail followed, Mom this time, furious in that clipped way she uses when she's trying to sound in control and failing. They're accusing us, she hissed. You need to fix this, immediately. Then a text from Samantha. What did you do? I stared at the screen. I didn't know who had called them yet. I didn't know what exactly had been said, but I knew this. Someone official had just told my parents no, and it had hit them like a car crash. Ella looked over. Mom? Yeah, baby. Are they yelling? I exhaled slowly. They're upset. Why? Because they thought they could do whatever they wanted. Because they thought rules were for other people. Because they thought a 7-year-old was an acceptable casualty. But I didn't say any of that. Because they don't like being told stop, I said instead. Ella nodded once, like that made perfect sense. That night, she fell asleep without her coat folded like a shield at the foot of the bed. I watched her for a minute in the dim hotel light, then turned my phone off completely. I didn't need to hear them scream. I already knew what it meant. They had started the day certain, and they were ending it afraid. I met the lawyer 3 days later, not because I wanted to wait, because this is how long it took for paperwork to catch up with audacity. His office was quiet and aggressively normal. No leather chairs, no dramatic city view. Just a desk, a printer humming in the background, and a man who looked like he'd seen this exact situation enough times to be tired of it. He didn't ask how I was. Good lawyers don't. He opened a folder and said, "Here's what happened." "Thank you." A sentence with an object. "Your parents listed the house with a realtor," he said. "An offer came in. They accepted it. That's when the sold sign went up." "So it wasn't actually sold," I said. "No," he said. "It was under contract. That's not ownership transfer. That happens at closing." Good. Words with definitions. We're already doing better. "When I contacted the title company handling the transaction," he continued, "I told them 2 things. First, that you are the sole owner of the property, and second, that you deny authorizing any sale." "And that's when they called my parents," I said. "Yes," he said, "because from their perspective, something was very wrong." He flipped the folder toward me. Inside were copies of emails, clean and boring and devastating. Title ran ownership, he said. Your name came up. Sole owner. No co-owners. No exceptions. That alone stops a transaction until it's explained. So they asked for the explanation, I said. They did, he said. They asked your parents to prove they had authority to sell a house they don't own. I leaned back. And they couldn't. They tried, he said. That's the problem. He slid another document across the desk. I recognized it instantly. My name, my signature, and a scope I had never agreed to. This, he said, is the power of attorney they submitted. I read it once. Then again. Authority to sell real estate. Authority to transfer ownership. That's not what I signed, I said. I know, he said. The original POA you described doesn't include this language. This version does. So they added it. Yes. After the fact. Yes. I stared at the paper, oddly calm. So when escrow called them, they weren't just told we need clarification. They were told, this looks wrong. He nodded. Exactly. The moment you disputed authorization, and they produced a document that expanded their authority beyond what you granted, the transaction triggered a fraud review. And that's why they started screaming. Yes, he said. Because they realized professionals were now looking at what they did. I laughed once, quietly. My parents have never reacted well to supervision. He closed the folder. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a material alteration of a legal document. That's forgery. There it was. Plain. Unceremonious. Final. What happens now? I asked. We separate the issues, he said. You already reported the endangerment of your child. That was correct. This is different. He explained it without theatrics, a separate fraud report, prepared and submitted through his office. Notices sent formally. The power of attorney revoked in writing. The transaction terminated. And my parents? I asked. They are no longer treated as decision-makers, he said. By anyone. I signed what needed signing. Revocation, confirmation, dates, initials, all the things that look boring until you need them. When I stood to leave, he said, One more thing. Your parents are still in the house. Yes, I said. That's a problem. He nodded. I can formally revoke their permission to stay and issue a notice to vacate. If they don't leave, enforcement follows. Do it, I said. Once that's done, he added, your daughter shouldn't return until the house is clear. She won't, I said. He nodded again. That's the right order. They did not leave voluntarily. Of course they didn't. My mother called first, furious and wounded in equal measure. Dad followed with apologies that didn't include responsibility. Samantha sent messages that suggested she believed volume could reverse reality. I didn't respond. Blocking people is not immature. It's efficient. The notice to vacate expired. Enforcement was scheduled. I didn't bring Ella. She stayed with a friend, safe and distracted, unaware that her grandparents were about to experience consequences for the first time. I parked down the street and watched. The deputy knocked, explained, waited. My mother argued. Dad hovered. Samantha appeared, crying loudly enough to be heard from the sidewalk. None of it mattered. When they were finally escorted out, my mother spotted me and made a beeline like she still believed proximity was power. I hope you're proud, she said. I considered it. I'm relieved, I said. Pride can come later. The deputy closed the door behind them and handed me the keys. It's secured, he said. I nodded. Thank you. I brought Ella home that evening. She stood in the doorway, looking around like the house might argue back. "They're gone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "They're gone." She took off her shoes and placed them by the door, slowly, carefully, like she was reclaiming something. That night, she slept through without waking once. I stood in the hallway and listened to the house settle. There were still reports in motion, still fallout coming, still people somewhere who thought this had happened to them, but the house was quiet, and my child was safe. If they ever try again, I won't explain. I'll just let the paperwork do what it does best. Say no! 6 months later, the paperwork finished what I started. My parents were charged with forgery and child endangerment. Probation, heavy fines, mandatory classes they still swear were unnecessary. I'm sure the judge appreciated their feedback. We don't speak anymore. No calls, no updates, no family meetings. Silence turned out to be very efficient. Ella is thriving, sleeping through the night, laughing easily, calling our house home without hesitation. As for me, I sleep just fine. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.
Alright, quick hello. This is an original Tales First story about a family crossing a line and learning their consequences. Let's begin.
I don't care about the child, my mother-in-law said about my 9-year-old daughter. My husband agreed. My wife is not so smart. She will sign what we need. 7 days later, their lawyer called me in a panic because what I signed was... It was the Tuesday 2 weeks before Christmas in Chicago, and my daughter Sophie was still wearing her school uniform when Linda decided to say it out loud. We were in my kitchen, while the oven preheated and Sophie tried to tape a paper snowflake to the sliding door. Linda stood by the island like she owned the place, holding a mug she didn't ask for. Tyler leaned against the fridge with that "everybody relax" face he saved for when his mother was about to get mean. Linda nodded towards Sophie without even lowering her voice. I don't care about the child. Sophie's hand stopped. The tape drooped. She didn't cry. She just blinked, like she was trying to translate what she'd heard into something less sharp. Tyler didn't correct her. He didn't even look at Sophie. He looked at me. Then Linda slid a manila folder across my counter like it was a dessert menu. This needs to be signed tonight. Tyler finally spoke. Emily, just sign it. You don't need to read all that. That was the moment I realized they weren't talking to me like a partner. They were talking to me like an obstacle. And that's when I decided I would sign. Just not what they thought. The first rule in my house used to be simple. Sophie comes first. I said it early, I said it calmly, I said it like it was as normal as taking your shoes off at the door. 2 months after I married Tyler, we hosted a small Sunday dinner. Linda arrived 40 minutes early, let herself in with the spare key Tyler forgot to tell me he'd given her, and started rearranging my living room candles. Sophie came down in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair still damp from her shower, and Linda made a sound like she'd tasted something sour. Is she going to dress like that? Linda asked Tyler, not me. Tyler smiled too fast. Mom, it's fine. Linda's eyes slid to Sophie. Honey, some people don't teach their kids standards. You'll learn. Sophie didn't answer. She just went back upstairs. I followed her, knocked on her door, and found her folding a blanket over her knees like she was building a shield. She doesn't get to talk to you like that, I said, quiet and exact. Sophie shrugged, trying to look older than 9. It's okay. She likes you more. That sentence landed in my chest and stayed there. I went downstairs and told Tyler, we're not doing comments about Sophie's clothes. Tyler kissed my cheek, as if affection could substitute for agreement. I'll handle it. He didn't handle it. He just smoothed it. And Linda learned that if she pushed, he would cushion the impact for her. 2 weeks later, the next rule appeared, disguised as a favor. We were at a craft store, Sophie and I picking out glittery ornaments for a school project, when Tyler's phone buzzed. He stepped aside and came back with that careful voice. "My mom wants to help with Christmas shopping for Sophie." I smiled because I wanted peace. "That's sweet," he added. "She wants to be the one to take Sophie." "Just them." Sophie's face tightened like she'd just swallowed a dry cracker. "Do I have to?" Tyler laughed lightly. "No one's forcing you." But then he looked at me. Not Sophie. Me. Like this was my job to manage. So I said, "We can all go together." Tyler's smile flickered. "Mom said it would be easier without extra opinions." I stared at him. "Without me?" He raised both hands. "Babe, it's just shopping. Let her feel included." I watched Sophie stare at the floor tiles, counting invisible squares. "We're not doing one-on-one outings," I said. "Not yet." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Why are you making this a thing?" And just like that, the rule in my house wasn't a rule anymore. It was negotiable. The third scene happened in my driveway, in the dark, when the air smelled like snow and exhaust. Tyler had volunteered to pick Sophie up from school because I had a late meeting. I came home to find Sophie sitting on the front steps with her backpack still on, cheeks pink from the cold. "What happened?" I asked, unlocking the door. Sophie stood up too fast. "It's fine." Inside, Tyler was on the couch, shoes on, scrolling. "Hey," he said, like it was a normal Tuesday. I set my bag down. "Why was she outside?" Tyler didn't look up. "She didn't want to come in." Sophie's voice was small. "He was on the phone with Grandma." Tyler sighed, finally setting his phone down. "Mom just asked how things were going. Sophie got sensitive." I turned to Sophie. "What did she say?" Sophie's eyes went shiny, but she forced the words out. "She said I'm lucky you married Tyler because now I have a real family and I shouldn't mess it up." Tyler rolled his eyes like a teenager. "That's not what she meant." I felt my face stay calm while everything inside me went tight. "You let her say that to Sophie." Tyler leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Emily, my mom is old school. She's not trying to hurt her." Sophie whispered. "It did hurt." Tyler looked at Sophie for half a second, then back to me. "You see? This is why I didn't want you to make rules. It makes everyone tense." I stood there, keys still in my hand, realizing that Tyler had found a way to make harm sound like my overreaction. That night, after Sophie went to bed, I asked Tyler, "Did you ever tell your mom to stop?" He reached for me like a peace offering. "Don't start. It's Christmas season." And I swallowed it, because I didn't want Sophie to see another rupture. Not after losing her dad. Tyler knew that. Linda knew that. They both used it. The fourth scene was quieter, which made it worse. We were at Linda's house for a cookie day, and she set Sophie up at the dining table with sprinkles and frosting and 2 bright overhead lights. Then she handed Tyler her phone and said, "Show her." Tyler cleared his throat. "My mom found a great financial advisor. He does family planning." I blinked. "Okay." Linda smiled like a teacher about to assign homework. "It's important. Tyler told me you inherited something after your first husband passed. You should protect the family." My mouth went dry. "That's not a dinner conversation." Linda waved a hand. "Oh, please. I know there's money set aside. Don't pretend there isn't." Sophie looked up, frosting on her fingertip, confused. Tyler said softly, "Babe, it's not a big deal. Mom just wants us to be smart." Linda leaned in. "And to be clear, any money you got because of your situation should benefit your current household, not just your child." Sophie's shoulders hunched, as if she could make herself smaller. I said, "Sophie's father's assets are for Sophie." Linda smiled without warmth. "We'll see." On the drive home, Tyler kept his voice gentle like that made it okay. "Mom's just worried. She thinks you're being rigid." "She called Sophie just your child," I said. Tyler exhaled like I was exhausting. "Emily, you take everything personally." I stared out at the wet streets, the Christmas lights blurring. "It's not personal. It's my kid." Tyler nodded, but it wasn't agreement. It was patience. The kind you use on someone you think you can outlast. By the time 2 weeks before Christmas rolled around, I had learned the pattern. Linda controlled through help. Tyler controlled through calm. Sophie absorbed everything like a sponge, then tried to wring herself out in private. And then, on that Tuesday, Linda brought the folder. The folder looked official. Tabs, sticky notes, a cover page with a law firm header. Linda placed it on my counter as if she was placing a burden. Tyler stood behind her shoulder, not quite touching her, but close enough that I could see where his loyalty lived. "What is this?" I asked. Linda's smile was thin. "Just some paperwork, a power of attorney, and a few updates to your accounts." "My accounts," I repeated. Tyler's voice slid in, smooth. "It's routine. If anything happens to you, I need to be able to handle things." I kept my tone even. "If something happens to me, Sophie's guardian is already designated." Linda's eyes narrowed. "We're not talking about custody. Don't be dramatic. We're talking about money." Sophie was at the table with markers, making a card for her teacher. She paused, listening. Tyler leaned closer to me, like he was sharing a secret. "We're behind on a couple things. This will help us consolidate. Mom knows a guy." I stared at him. "Behind on what things?" He didn't answer. He just said, "Not in front of Sophie." Linda lifted her chin. "She doesn't need to be involved." Sophie's marker squeaked across paper, then stopped. I asked Linda, "Why are you here with this?" Linda's smile widened, almost proud. "Because Tyler said you're not the smartest with paperwork. He said you'll sign what you need to sign if we present it properly." Tyler didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. He just said, "Mom, don't say it like that." Linda shrugged. "It's true. She'll sign what we need." Sophie's chair scraped back. She stood, quiet, and walked upstairs without a word. My hands stayed on the counter. "Tyler," I said, "did you tell her that?" Tyler's eyes flicked toward the stairs, then back to me. "Emily, you're making it sound evil. We're a family." Linda tapped the folder. "Sign tonight. We need it before the holidays." I looked at the signature tabs, yellow flags that screamed urgency. Then I looked at Tyler, who wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. I nodded once. "Okay." Linda's shoulders relaxed like she'd won something. And that was the moment I stopped arguing out loud and started planning in silence. I didn't sign the folder that night. I made dinner. I asked Sophie about her spelling quiz. I packed her lunch. I kissed her forehead and watched her eyes search mine like she was trying to confirm reality. After she fell asleep, Tyler tried again. He brought the folder into the bedroom and set it on the dresser like a gift. "Let's just get it done," he said. I sat on the edge of the bed and folded my hands. "Tell me what you're behind on." Tyler rubbed his jaw. "It's complicated." "Say it anyway." He exhaled. "Credit cards, some personal loans, and I took out a loan to cover Mom's roof." I stared. "You borrowed money for your mom's roof?" Tyler's face tightened. "She needed help. And you didn't tell me." He said it like a complaint. "You would have freaked out." I kept my voice flat. So your solution is to have me sign a power of attorney over my assets. Tyler leaned forward, softer, like he was trying to soothe a toddler. Babe, it's not like that. It's just for convenience. Convenience for who? He glanced away. For us. I reached for the folder and flipped the first page. Dense paragraphs, legal language, and at the bottom, my name printed next to a line. I read the title twice. Durable Power of Attorney. I looked up. This gives you authority to act on my behalf. Tyler shrugged. Only if you're unavailable. And how do they define unavailable? I asked. Tyler's mouth opened, then closed. It's standard. I flipped to the next tab. A section about financial accounts. Another about real property. Another about trusts. My spine went cold. Why is there a trust section? Tyler's eyes sharpened. Because you have one. I held his gaze. Sophie has one. Tyler's voice dropped. Emily, we're married. It affects our household. I felt my hands stay steady, even as my stomach turned. Sophie's trust is not household money. Tyler's nostrils flared. You're acting like I'm a stranger. I said, right now, you are. He looked at the folder, then at me, then said the sentence that made the air change. My mom is right. You're not that smart with this stuff. That's why we're helping. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was casual. And that casualness is what made it dangerous. The next morning, the first humiliation happened, small enough that Tyler could pretend it didn't count. Sophie and I were in the car, windshield wipers slapping at sleet, when Tyler called. I put him on speaker because Sophie liked hearing his voice when he was being normal. He didn't say hello to Sophie. He said, Emily, I told my mom you'd sign today. Sophie stared out the window, jaw tight. I said, I'm taking Sophie to school. Tyler's tone sharpened. You always have an excuse. Sophie's voice came out, careful. Mom doesn't have excuses. She has stuff. Tyler paused, then laughed like it was cute. See? She's learning manipulation from you. Sophie's cheeks flushed. She whispered. I didn't. I cut in, calm. Don't talk to her like that. Tyler sighed. Put the kid away from the phone. This is adult business. Sophie's eyes widened, and she reached to turn the volume down herself, like she wanted to disappear from the conversation. I said, We'll talk later, and hung up. That was humiliation number 1, reducing Sophie to the kid, like her existence was noise. The second one came that afternoon, more direct. I picked Sophie up from school and found Tyler already home, sitting at the kitchen table with Linda. They'd let themselves in again. Linda had brought her own pen. Sophie stopped in the doorway. Linda looked up and smiled too big. There she is. Sophie didn't move. Tyler said, Hey, Soph, go upstairs. We're doing paperwork. Sophie's voice was quiet but firm. I don't want Grandma here. Linda's smile vanished. Excuse me? Sophie's hands clenched around her backpack straps. You said you don't care about me. The kitchen went still. Linda's eyes snapped to me like it was my fault Sophie had ears. Tyler stood abruptly. Sophie, that's enough. You don't speak to my mother that way. Sophie's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I didn't speak to her. I repeated her. Tyler's face darkened. Upstairs. Now. Sophie looked at me like she was waiting for me to choose her out loud. I said, Sophie, go wash your hands and start your homework. I'll be up in a minute. Her lips pressed together. She nodded once and walked away slowly, each step heavy. Linda leaned toward Tyler and didn't lower her voice. See? She's disrespectful. That child is a problem. Tyler didn't correct her. He just looked at me and said, Sign. Let's not drag this out. That was humiliation number 2. Tyler defending Linda against Sophie's truth. Then came the third one, the main violation, wrapped in the same fake calm. Linda opened the folder to a page I hadn't seen yet. Here, she said, sliding it toward me. This one gives Tyler the authority to manage the trust and any distributions. My voice stayed steady. No! Linda's expression hardened. Emily, don't be stupid. The trust is money sitting there doing nothing. Tyler can invest it. It's Sophie's, I said. Linda's eyes were flat. I already told you. I don't care about the child. I care about family stability. Tyler nodded like that made sense. We need it. I need it. I stared at him. For what? He swallowed, then said it quickly. We're trying to buy a bigger house. And I promised Mom I'd help her with her mortgage refinancing. And there's something else. I felt my pulse stay strangely slow. Something else. Tyler's eyes flicked to Linda, then away. Just sign. Linda leaned in, voice sharp. Your first husband is dead. That money isn't doing him any good. My skin went cold. Don't say his name like that. Linda shrugged. Truth is truth. Tyler's voice rose just a little. Emily, you're being emotional. I looked at the page again. It wasn't just a power of attorney. It was a reshuffling of authority, a way to step around the protections my late husband and I had put in place. They weren't asking me to sign paperwork. They were asking me to hand my daughter's future to people who openly didn't care if she got hurt. I slid the folder back. I'm not signing today. Tyler's face tightened. Yes, you are. I stood. No, I'm not. Linda's eyes flashed. Then you'll regret it. Tyler stepped closer to me and lowered his voice, like a threat disguised as a promise. My wife is not so smart. She will sign what we need. He said it like he was quoting himself, like he was proud. I looked at him, then at Linda, then toward the stairs where Sophie's footsteps had stopped. She was probably listening. I nodded once, slow. Okay. Tyler exhaled, relieved, and Linda's shoulders relaxed again. I walked out of the kitchen, went upstairs, and sat on the edge of Sophie's bed. She was doing math problems with shaky pencil lines. She didn't look up. Are you going to sign? I kept my voice soft. I'm going to handle it. Sophie's eyes lifted to mine, searching. Will I be okay? I put my hand over hers, steady. Yes. Then I stood, went to my closet, and pulled out the binder I kept hidden behind winter scarves, the one with Sophie's trust documents, the one Tyler didn't know I updated last year. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, and I became very calm and very final. On Thursday morning, I didn't argue. I didn't confront. I didn't announce boundaries like a speech. I packed Sophie's lunch, braided her hair, and drove her to school like everything was normal. The sky was the color of old paper, and the radio played Christmas songs I didn't listen to. At drop-off, Sophie held my hand longer than usual. Are you mad? She asked. No, I said. I'm focused. She nodded like she understood the difference. After I watched her walk into the building, I didn't go home. I drove downtown, parked in a garage that smelled like wet concrete, and walked into a law office with a brass plaque that read estate planning. The receptionist smiled. Can I help you? I said, I need to see an attorney about a minor's trust and attempted financial coercion. She didn't ask me to explain in the lobby. She just nodded and handed me paperwork. Within 20 minutes, I was sitting across from a woman named Marisol, who wore glasses on a chain and had the kind of calm that made you feel safer just by proximity. She flipped through the documents I'd brought, her fingers quick and precise. You're the trustee, she said, tapping a page. And the trust has language limiting distributions to Sophie's benefit, which is good. I nodded. My husband and his mother are trying to get me to sign a power of attorney that would let him access it. Marisol's eyebrows lifted. He can't access it without your cooperation, unless you sign something that grants authority. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. I want to lock it down further. Marisol leaned back. We can add additional protections. We can formalize that no power of attorney can override trustee authority without court approval. We can place the assets in a structure that requires judicial review for any changes. I exhaled. Do it! She slid a new set of documents toward me, explained each page with short sentences, and asked me questions that mattered. Sophie's age, my late husband's intentions, any previous amendments. I answered like a person reading a grocery list, because staying calm was my only luxury. Marisol pointed to signature lines. These filings reinforce Sophie's protected interest. If someone tries to present a power of attorney, it won't grant access to this trust. And if they try something else, it creates a record. I'm also sending a formal notice to the firm listed on that packet and to the trust's custodian. So any attempt to use those packet documents against the trust gets flagged immediately. I picked up the pen. I signed. Not Linda's folder. Not Tyler's plan. I signed what made my daughter untouchable. When I walked out, my phone buzzed 3 times. Tyler. I didn't answer. I drove to Sophie's school, checked her out early, and took her to a small diner with red booths and a sticky tabletop. She ate fries like she hadn't eaten in days. Are we in trouble? She asked, ketchup on her lip. No, I said. We're setting rules that actually work. She looked relieved, then worried again. Is Tyler mad? I don't know, I said. But his feelings aren't the priority. Sophie nodded slowly, like she was practicing the idea. When we got home, Tyler's car was in the driveway. Linda's was behind it. I walked Sophie inside, hung her coat, and said softly, "Go upstairs and change into something comfy. If you hear voices, you stay in your room. Okay?" Sophie's eyes widened. Okay. Then I walked into the kitchen and found Tyler and Linda sitting at my table again. My table. With the folder open like a weapon. Tyler stood up. Where were you? I set my purse down carefully. Out. Linda's eyes narrowed. Did you sign? I smiled a little. Not warm. Just controlled. I signed. Tyler's shoulders loosened. Good. Linda pushed the folder toward me. Then sign these too. I didn't touch it. Tyler frowned. What do you mean you signed? I met his eyes. I mean, I handled Sophie's trust. Linda's face went still. What did you do? I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Tyler stepped closer, voice rising. Emily, you can't just make legal changes without even telling me. I tilted my head. Watch me. That's when Tyler made his first real move. Not heroic, not brave, but real. He looked at Linda and said, Mom, maybe you should go. Linda whipped her head toward him. Excuse me? Tyler's voice was shaky. Just go home. For now. Linda stood so fast her chair scraped. You're choosing her over your own mother. Tyler didn't answer. His jaw clenched, and he looked at the floor like a man realizing he'd been trained. Linda grabbed her purse. Fine, but don't expect me to help you when this blows up. She walked out, slamming the door hard enough that the Christmas cards on the counter shifted. Tyler turned to me, breath tight. What did you do? I picked up my phone, opened my email, and showed him the confirmation from Marisol's office. Nothing detailed, just enough to prove action. Tyler's face went pale. You locked it. I nodded. Yes. He swallowed. My mom is going to freak out. I said, "Let her." Tyler stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're going to ruin Christmas." I didn't raise my voice. "You already did." Upstairs, the floor creaked. Sophie had shifted in her room. I looked at Tyler, still calm. "We'll talk, but not with your mother here. And not while you're still pretending this was help." 7 days later, I was rinsing a mug at the sink when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" A man's voice came through, fast and clipped. "Is this Emily?" "Yes." "I'm an attorney with the firm listed on that power of attorney packet. I need to speak with Tyler immediately. There's a serious problem with those documents." Tyler's head snapped up, confused. I held the phone out. He took it. "Yes," he said, voice tight. "This is Tyler." A pause. His face changed again. Confused, then worried, then scared. He swallowed hard. "What do you mean, lawyer?" And I knew the dominoes had started falling. Tyler listened for less than a minute, then pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at it like it had insulted him. He ended the call. That was some attorney." I leaned against the counter. "From where?" Tyler's voice was strained. "From the firm on Mom's paperwork." I nodded once. "Okay." Tyler looked at me, eyes wide. He said they received notice. Something about the trust being protected and any POA being invalid for it. He sounded rattled, like he was trying not to panic. I didn't react. I just said, "He should." Tyler's hands started to shake. Then he shoved them into his pockets like he could hide the truth in fabric. "Emily, why would they call me?" "Because someone tried to do something that triggered a legal response," I said. "And they were sloppy." Tyler's face flushed. "My mom wouldn't," I cut in, still calm. "Your mom brought papers to my house, told me she didn't care about Sophie, and asked me to sign control away. Whatever she wouldn't do, she already did." He opened his mouth, closed it. Then his phone rang again. He answered with a forced calm that didn't match his eyes. "Hello?" This time I heard the other voice faintly through the speaker, fast, clipped, professional. Tyler's shoulders slumped. Yes, I understand." He looked at me like he wanted me to fix it for him. I didn't. He said into the phone, "No, I did not tell my mother to forge anything." His eyes snapped to mine. Forge. The word hit the air like a dropped plate. He went quiet, listened, then said, Okay, I'll tell her." He hung up and stared at the floor. "They think someone tried to falsify a signature on one of the forms tied to that packet," he whispered. I blinked slowly. "On what?" Tyler's throat bobbed. "On a beneficiary change. Or a distribution request. I don't know. He wouldn't say much. Just that they're withdrawing from representation and documenting everything." I pictured Linda's confident smile, her manila folder, her yellow sticky tabs. My voice stayed even. "So, the lawyer is backing away." Tyler nodded, swallowing hard. "And they called you in a panic," I said. He looked up sharply, like he realized the sentence matched something he'd heard before. "Emily." I pushed off the counter. "I need you to sit." He did, slowly, like his knees had finally gotten the message. I walked to the stairs and called up, "Sophie, you can come down now." Sophie appeared at the top, pajama pants and a hoodie, hair half loose. She held the banister like it was an anchor. "It's okay," I said. "Come sit with me." She came down and sat beside me on the couch. Tyler stared at her like he didn't know what to say. Sophie didn't look at him. She looked at me. "Are we safe?" I nodded. "Yes." The next scene came the following morning. Friday, when snow started falling in thick clumps and the city turned quiet in that way it only does when the weather demands respect. I dropped Sophie at school and came home to find Tyler already gone. Not to work. His car was gone too. On the kitchen table, he'd left the folder, open, like a dare. I didn't touch it with my bare hands this time. I took pictures of every page with my phone, slow and thorough, capturing signatures, dates, notary stamps. Then I slid it into a zip bag, sealed it, and put it in my file drawer beside Sophie's birth certificate. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "I'm at Mom's. We need to talk tonight." I typed back, "We can talk here, without her." A minute later, "She's freaking out. You didn't have to do this." I stared at the screen, then typed, "You did this." No more words. No more explaining. At noon, I got a call from Sophie's school. "This is the front office," a woman said. "Linda, your mother-in-law, came to pick Sophie up. She's not on the approved list. We didn't release her." My hand tightened around the phone. "Thank you. Please don't, under any circumstances." The woman's voice stayed professional. She was upset. She said Tyler gave her permission. "I'm Sophie's mother and legal guardian," I said. "Not Tyler. Not Linda." There was a pause. "Understood. We'll make a note." When I hung up, I didn't panic. I did something quieter. I drove to the school and updated the pickup list in person, adding a password phrase Sophie and I chose on the spot, 2 words that meant safety. Then I sat in my car and called Marisol. "I need to document an attempted unauthorized school pickup," I said. Marisol didn't sound surprised. "Email me the details. Keep it factual. Date, time, who said what." I did, from the parking lot, while my breath fogged the windshield. This was the second front I hadn't expected. Linda wasn't just after money. She was after access, the kind that makes you feel powerful. And she'd just shown me how far she'd go. That evening, Tyler came home alone. His face looked older, like stress had pressed down on him all day. He stood in the doorway and said, "Emily, can we not do this in front of Sophie?" I glanced toward the living room where Sophie was coloring quietly. "She already knows. You just haven't caught up." Tyler's shoulders dropped. "My mom said you're turning her into a weapon." Sophie's head lifted, eyes sharp. I said, "Sophie is a person." Tyler looked at Sophie finally. "Hey, Soph." Sophie didn't answer. Tyler swallowed. "Mom went to your school." I didn't widen my eyes. I didn't gasp. I just nodded. "Yes." Tyler's face tightened. "She said she was just trying to help." I walked to the drawer, pulled out the folder in the zip bag, and set it on the table between us. "This is what help looks like in your family." Tyler stared at it. "Emily." I held up my hand. "No, listen. Your mom attempted to remove my child from her school without permission. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a boundary violation." Tyler's voice cracked. "She didn't mean," I cut in. "Intent doesn't undo impact, and it doesn't undo patterns." Tyler sank into a chair. "The lawyer dropped her," he said quietly. "He said he can't be involved if there's fraud." I waited. Tyler looked up, eyes wet but not dramatic. "She forged something, Emily. I think she forged my name." The room went silent. Sophie's crayon paused. I said, "Did you know?" Tyler shook his head fast. "No, I swear. She told me it was routine." I nodded once. "That's what you told me." Tyler flinched like I'd slapped him with truth. I said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay somewhere else for now." Tyler's mouth fell open. "What?" I kept my voice low. "You can stay with your mom, or a friend, but you're not sleeping here while you're still tied to her choices." Tyler's hands gripped the edge of the table. Emily, please. It's Christmas. I looked at Sophie, then back at him. That's exactly why. Tyler stood, paced once, then stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. If I leave, you'll tell everyone. I'll tell the truth if I have to, I said. But I'm not running a smear campaign. I'm protecting my kid. Tyler's eyes darted toward Sophie. She stared at him with a look that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Too old for 9. He whispered, I didn't think she'd go that far. I said, You didn't think because thinking would have required you to stop her. Tyler's shoulders sagged. Can I at least say goodbye? I nodded. He walked to Sophie, crouched in front of her. Hey, he said, voice soft. I'm sorry. Sophie's lips pressed together. Are you still on her side? Tyler swallowed. I don't know how to do this. Sophie nodded like that was the answer. Then you shouldn't be the one deciding stuff. Tyler's eyes closed for a second. He stood, grabbed a bag from the closet, and left without another argument. The next domino fell the day after, Saturday, when Linda texted me a message that tried to sound sweet. Emily, honey, let's meet. We can fix this. Tyler is upset and you're overreacting. Bring Sophie to my house for Coco. I didn't respond. An hour later, she sent another. You're keeping my granddaughter from me. I stared at the word granddaughter. Linda had never called Sophie that before. Not once. I typed one message, short and factual. Do not contact Sophie directly. Do not come to her school. Communication goes through me. Then I muted her. By afternoon, the financial domino hit. Tyler's paycheck usually went into our joint account. That day, it didn't. Instead, I got an alert. Tyler had opened a new account and redirected his deposit. It wasn't clever. It was panic. He texted, Mom says you'll freeze me out. I need to protect myself. I stared at the screen and felt nothing but clarity. I replied, I'm not freezing you out. I'm separating what you already tried to take. Then I walked to my desk and opened every shared subscription. Streaming, cell plan, the family credit card Tyler insisted was easier. I didn't cancel to punish. I canceled to stop leakage. I left Tyler's phone line active for 7 days, just enough time to transfer, then set it to end. That evening, Tyler showed up at the door, eyes red, shoulders tight. You canceled my card. I kept my voice steady. I canceled access to my credit. Tyler's mouth opened, then he stopped. Mom said you'd do this. I nodded. Mom is right about one thing. I'm done being used. He stared at me. Where am I supposed to go? I didn't soften. That's for you to figure out. You had time to plan when you were planning behind my back. Tyler flinched. Emily, I love you. I looked at him for a long second. Love doesn't sound like she'll sign what we need. Tyler's face crumpled. He looked past me into the house, where Sophie stood halfway down the stairs, watching. He whispered, Can I talk to her? I shook my head. Not tonight. Tyler nodded slowly, like he knew he'd earned that. No. He walked away, shoulders hunched, and didn't slam the door. That was his smallest real step, accepting a boundary without breaking something. The next domino was family reputation, and it happened fast because Linda couldn't stand losing control quietly. Sunday morning, my phone lit up with messages from Tyler's aunt, his cousin, even his older brother. Linda says you stole Tyler's money. Linda says you're keeping Sophie from her. Linda says you're mentally unstable. I didn't respond to any of them right away. I read them, took screenshots, and saved them in a folder labeled Facts. Then I wrote one message in the family group chat Tyler had added me to months ago, a chat I'd barely used because Linda dominated it with memes and guilt. I kept it short, factual, no emotions. Hi, everyone. Linda attempted to remove Sophie from school on Friday without being authorized. Tyler and Linda brought paperwork to my home attempting to gain control of Sophie's trust. I met with an estate attorney and secured additional protections for Sophie. For safety, Linda is not permitted to contact Sophie directly or pick her up. Please do not relay messages to Sophie. Thanks. Then I put my phone down. Within minutes, Linda replied in all caps, "How dare you? You're lying!" Then Tyler's aunt replied, "Linda, did you go to the school?" Silence. Then Tyler's cousin, "Why would you try to pick up a child you're not authorized to pick up?" More silence. Then Tyler's brother, "Mom, answer the question." Linda sent one more message. "You're all turning on me because of her." And that was the moment her power shifted. Not because I attacked her, because she had no calm facts to counter mine. By Monday, Tyler came to the house with a small gift bag and a nervous expression. He stood on the porch like a guest. "I brought Sophie something," he said. I didn't move aside. "Say what you need to say first." Tyler swallowed. "My mom told me to come here and get you to sign another thing. She said it'll fix it." I told her no. I held his gaze. "You told her no." He nodded. "I did." I waited. Tyler took a breath. "And I told her she can't go near Sophie's school again." My throat tightened for half a second. Then I released it. "Okay." He looked down at the gift bag. "Can I give this to Sophie?" I stepped aside. 2 minutes. Living room only. Tyler nodded like he'd accept any terms if it meant a chance. Sophie came in, cautious, and Tyler handed her the bag. It was a small stuffed fox and a gift card to her favorite bookstore. Sophie looked up at him. "Did you tell Grandma she was wrong?" Tyler's eyes shone. "Yes." Sophie stared for a beat, then nodded once. "Okay." That was all she gave him. Not forgiveness, not warmth, just acknowledgement of a step. When Tyler left, he didn't ask for more. On Christmas Eve, Sophie and I started a new tradition on purpose. We drove through the north side to look at lights, got hot chocolate, and listened to a silly audiobook in the car. No big speeches, just safety wrapped in normal. When we got home, my phone buzzed once. A message from Linda, sent from a new number. "Merry Christmas. You can't keep him forever." I stared at it, then blocked the number. Sophie looked up from the couch. "Who was that?" I didn't lie. "Linda." Sophie's shoulders tightened. "What did she say?" I chose calm honesty. "She's unhappy she can't control things." Sophie nodded slowly, then went back to her book. That was the win. Not fireworks, not revenge, just a child returning to her own life. A week later, Tyler met me at a coffee shop to talk logistics. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd realized peace costs something. "I'm moving into a short-term rental," he said. "I'm going to therapy, and I signed something saying I won't pursue any claim to Sophie's trust." I raised my eyebrows. "You did that voluntarily?" He nodded. "Marisol sent it. I read it. I signed." I took a sip of coffee. "Okay." Tyler's eyes searched mine. "Do you think we can ever fix this?" I didn't rush to comfort him. "I don't know, but Sophie and I are safe now. That's the foundation. Everything else is optional." Tyler nodded, swallowing hard, and for the first time, he didn't argue with the word optional. When I picked Sophie up from school that afternoon, she ran to me with her backpack bouncing and said, "Mom, guess what? I got invited to the art club." I smiled. "That's amazing." She grabbed my hand. "Can we celebrate with pizza?" "We can," I said. "And we will." We walked to the car under a pale winter sun, and the world felt steady again. Not perfect, not painless, but ours. And I'll ask you one thing. If someone told you they didn't care about your child, would you wait for them to prove it twice? Or would you do the quiet move the first time? Comment below and subscribe for more stories.